The comparist has to know that comparative literature is a method of investigation, while world literature is a body of valuable literary works. Good noon to everyone. Myself Divya Parmar. I and Mayuri Pandya going to present an article by Amiya, Comparative Literature and Culture. So this is the abstract of an article. In this article, comparative literature in India, Amiya bases his discussion on the fact that India has a many language and literature, thus representing a pioneer situation and conditions of a diversity. Following are the points to several ideas which is discussed in Dev's article. Speaking of an Indian literature in singular is a problematic as well as uh, speaking of Indian literature in plural is equally problematic. His article compares the unity and diversity thesis and identifies the relationship between Indian communality and difference as the prime site of a comparative literature in India. In this article, further he searched for the common uh, denominators and the possible patterns togetherness. Dev underlines the location and local inter-Indian reception as an aspect of interliterariness. So, the key argument of the article is a priori location of the comparative literature with the regard to aspect of a diversity and unity in India. Literary process and a dialectical view of literary interaction, linguistic diversity. And the third argument is Indian literature is a singular, a valid category, or are we rather to speak of Indian literature in the plural? So, comparative literature in India. As Dev mentioned in his article that I discuss an a priori location of a comparative literature with regard to aspect of a diversity and unity in India, a country of immense linguistic diversity and thus a country of a many literature. So as we all know that India is a multicultural nation and it has many languages. So it is obvious that the literature in the many languages are different. Based on history, ideology, and often on politics, scholars of a literature argue either a unity of Indian literature or for a diversity and a distinctness of the literature of India. Uh, the second point is that an addiction to the 18th language is listed in the constitutions for more are recognized by the Sahitya Akademi, National Academy of Letters, for reason of their significance in literature. Assami, Bengali, Dogri, Indian English, Gujarati, Hindi, Kannada, Konkani, Kashmiri, Maithili, Malayalam, Manipuri, Marathi, Nepali, Oriya, Punjabi, Rajasthani, Sanskrit, Sindhi, Tamil, Telugu, and Urdu. So, according to census of 1961 and 1971, it recorded total 1,652 languages, while in last census of 1981 and 1981, in some 221 spoken English languages were recorded, excluding languages of speakers totaling less than 10,000. Many of 221 languages groups are small, of course, and it is only the 18 listed which I have told. So another point is Indian literature. Uh, Indian literature are ancient. Two of them, Sanskrit and Tamil, ancient in the sense of inequality, while the rest of an average age of 8 to 900 years, except one recent arrival in the 19th century as an outcome of the colonial Western impact of Indian English. So the ancient literature was mostly written in the Sanskrit language and Tamil language. It is also written in Pali and Prakrit language. Is Indian literature in the singular a valid category, or we rather to speak to Indian literature in the plural? When we discussed about the Indian literature, we say just one name to Indian literature, but in Indian literature there are so many language, and every language have a different type of culture, and every language has its own literature. So to discuss Indian literature as a singular or plural is the question here. This is the name of a Guru Bhagat Singh, who has who has been discussing the notion of a different multilingual. He does not accept the idea of Indian literature as such, but opts for the designation of the literature produced in India. Guru Bhagat Singh talk about the designation of a literature. It's included a multi-language in literature. He discussed about that. According to Singh, literature not only linguistic but also cultural singularities. With the regards to the history of a comparative literature as a discipline, he rejects both of a French and the American schools, as well as the idea of a Goethe's well literature. Instead, he argues for a celebration of a difference and has anticipated Charles Benhamer's much discussed comparative literature in the age of a multiculturalism. Singh's proposal to defer Russians multilingual as a program will perhaps unable to understand Indian diversity with the sacrificing individuality for the particular. Here the mention of the post-structuralist stance is a particularly very rhetoric in the name of integration, and call to a emotion in name of the nation runs against its basic principles, nationalism and fundamentalism of any type of build, and rementalism and exclusion. The another point is instead of 15 theory to the experience of literature, the latter is fit to the theory. Thus, the resulting is an overabundance of the meta theory. Ironically, Indian post-structuralism inflicts upon itself sameness with the different speakers elsewhere, and does not seem to recognize that the different speaking in India may be different from the differ speaking elsewhere. Further, they mentioned that I am convinced that the situes as the important as the theoretization, particular in a country where the decolonization process is still incomplete and where neo-colonial situation is in the making. If we see the meaning of the word situes, the place to the which for a purpose to a legal jurisdiction or a totalization of the property begins. Tagore spoke in many of his prose texts, and it is a situs through Gandhi so consistently practiced, and the Indian Marxism too. The question of situs has again and again appeared as a particular problematic. Situs means a cultural and linguistic rootedness, than a notion in commonality in applicable. Although we cannot ignore the danger or communality turning itself in self refer or even a nationalism or racism. The theorist must make sure the communality will not be turned into ideological and the political commodity. Here we have one more argue by Jaidev, and it is that the Jaidev's concept of a oneness provides an ambience of a particular concerns with the regard to a cultural and artistic expression, such as a case of a language overlaps, the and the multilinguality of authors and their readerships, openness to a different genres, the sharing of themes based on in similar social and historical experiences, emphasis on the oral performing modes of a culture and the artistic transmission. So, uh, these are my points. Further, I would like to call Mayuri.
So it was the page number 4 in article, last paragraph. Uh, Aziz Ahmad, in his theory, classes, nations, and literature, Ahmad described the construct of a syndicate Indian literature that suggests an errated and unsatisfactory categorization of Indian literature. Also, he was suggested that European literature is the best and umbrella designation and at the worst pedagogical imposition, while Indian literature is a classifiable and categorizable. European and African literature have some historical signifiers in the addition in their geographical designation. These are a recent concept, whereas Indian homogeneity has the weight of the traditional behind it. Indian literature was that authenticated, and not only that, history too was the proposed for it with the forms and techniques varying from age to age. And the, another page, page number 5 of article, he was describing several Indian scholars like V.K. Gokak, Sujit Mukherjee, who are speaking of an Indo-English corpus of literature that was the created out of English translation of major texts from major Indian languages. Thus, the idea of Indian literature. This was the idea by the Mukherjee, and another was the scholar like Gotak Mukherjee, Motilal Jotwani suggested that implementing English as the function, owning to the ever-growing corpus of translations from the various Indian literature into English, thus making this a new corpus of Indo-English literature available to all. As we know that India have the many languages, and as a hegemonic and cultural view, we say that Western are see that Indian languages with Sanskrit, Pali, and Prakrit, but there are other many languages which also produce the many literature and many scholar in those languages. The official national language is Hindi, and if a literary text from the other languages could be in a toto translated into Hindi, we could possibly arrive at the national Indian literature. And Indian literature is neither a simple unity. It was given by Swapan Majroomdar, neither simple unity as hegemonious of the national state persuasion would like it to be, nor a simple diversity as a relativist or post-structuralist would like to do it. Majumdar suggests that Indian literature is neither one nor a many, but rather a systematic wall where many subsystems interact towards one in the constitution and never-ending directive. And the other reference of the Das, a method and result to date shown that Indian literature is neither a unity nor is it a total differential. It was the page number 6, which where the Das view and his method are describing by Amiya Dev. And another reference of that last paragraph of the Gujarati poet Uma Shankar Joshi. He was believing in a unity approach, and he was the first Indian National Comparative Literature Association president of the Indian National Comparative Literature Association, and Kannada writer U.R. Ananthamurthy is the current president of the Comparative Literature Association of India. There was a time when I spoke in the terms of then extra. It was by the Dev, conscious on the part of the individual language writer for a Bengali literature. For instance, I show a Bengali plus for Hindi literature, Hindi plus for Tamil literature, Tamil plus, etc. There are many regional literature and regional language, and they suggested that there are many literature. We can't consider that Indian literature in the sense of the only Sanskrit literature, but there are many regional literature and scholar. In the last page of the article, Indian literature consisted of the author's extra consciousness and not of the archivable entity as such, but rather a state of mind in order to justify the unity of Indian literature. As a reader, consciously or subconsciously, we place the text in the additional language besides our original and first text, or on a many one many say that alternatively has others language text impels us to do so. We can use this active juxtaposing towards the possible communality in the genre of history, and juxtaposing do not means that we have already made up our mind about the so-called Indian novel of the first phrase 19th century, and reduce their text to their common denominator. The texts are very much themselves the Oriya of obsoletely Oriya, the Marathi absolutely Marathi, and so on. This is far from the setting up interior post postulate for the Indian novel, the first phrase, and testing the text against them. Thus, inter-Indian reception presupposes that our sites is our first text, and that is the first language literature. This is the crucial for there is no man's land and or a neutral territory between Indian literature. In the last, finally he was conclude, like if we study the Canadian diversity, first we think about Canadian literature. If we recognize or understand the Canadian culture and literature, then we can speak about their diversity. For Indian literature, first we understand Indian diversity, then we speak about that diversity and comparative literature in India. Amitabh suggests that first we understand our own country's diversity and give the respect to the all literature, which is in a many language. Then we study the world diversity and comparative literature. Thank you.